The house on Willow Creek. So, I've never posted anything this personal before, and honestly, I'm not even sure if anyone will believe me. But I need to get it out of my system. Maybe writing it down will help me finally sleep through the night. Or maybe someone out there has gone through something similar and can tell me I'm not losing my mind. Either way, here it goes. When I was 17, my family moved into this old two-story house on Willow Creek Road. Small town in Indiana, population barely scratching 10,000. The kind of place where everyone knows your name, your business, and probably what you had for dinner last night. The house itself was, well, it was cheap. That's why my dad bought it. He always said, a house is just walls and a roof. Doesn't matter if it's a little beat up, we'll make it ours. He had this whole plan about fixing it up and selling it one day, but honestly, none of us were thrilled about the move. It was bigger than our old rental, sure, but there was something about it that just didn't sit right with me from the start. The wallpaper was peeling in these long strips, like the house was shedding its skin. The air inside smelled damp, like rain-soaked cardboard. And the basement? Don't even get me started on the basement. The stairs creaked like they were screaming every time you stepped on them, and the single light bulb at the bottom flickered so much it was basically useless. But hey, I was a teenager. I rolled my eyes and told myself I was just being dramatic. The first week was normal enough. We unpacked, argued about where the furniture should go, ordered too much pizza. My mom hung family photos in the hallway, trying to make the place feel like home. My little sister, Emily, claimed the room with the big bay window because, according to her, it has princess vibes. I took the attic bedroom, not because I wanted it, but because my dad said I was old enough to handle a few spiders. But then, little things started happening. Things I couldn't explain. At first it was stupid stuff, doors not staying shut, lights flickering even though the wiring was supposedly fine. Once, I woke up and my desk chair was turned to face the bed. I told myself maybe I kicked it in my sleep, even though it was heavy and on carpet. Emily swore she heard whispering at night. My parents brushed it off as her imagination. New house, new sounds, my dad said. But when I asked her what the whispers said, she just shrugged and went pale. It wasn't just the house, though. The neighbors were off. We lived at the very end of the road, right next to this huge stretch of woods. Most of the other houses nearby were empty or half falling apart. But across the street lived this old man named Mr. Crawford. The first day we met him, he just stared at us from his porch, not saying a word. Later, when my dad went over to introduce himself, Crawford finally spoke. "You folks shouldn't be here," he said. "That house ain't meant for living." Dad laughed it off, but when he came back home, he didn't look as amused as he pretended to be. The nights got worse. I kept waking up at exactly 3:17 a.m. every single night. Not 3:15, not 3:20. Always 3:17. And always to the same thing, this faint scratching sound in the walls, like nails dragging on wood. Sometimes it was above me, sometimes below, sometimes right behind my headboard. One night, I finally worked up the nerve to tap on the wall back, just to prove to myself it was mice or something. I tapped 3 times. And then, I swear on everything I love, something tapped back. 3 times. I didn't sleep at all after that. The next morning, I told my parents. My mom tried to reassure me, but I saw the way she and my dad exchanged this quick look, like they didn't want me to notice. They knew something. And that was when I realized, moving to Willow Creek wasn't just about a cheap house or fixing it up. There was something else going on. Something my parents weren't telling me. The look my parents shared that morning wouldn't leave my head. It was quick, but I caught it, like they had a whole conversation with their eyes that I wasn't supposed to see. So, of course, I confronted them. "What aren't you telling me about this place?" I asked over breakfast. My dad chuckled and said, "Relax, champ. Every old house makes noises. It's probably raccoons in the walls. But my mom didn't laugh. She just busied herself with the dishes even though her plate was still full. That was the first crack. Later that week, I tried asking Emily about the whispers again. She refused to talk about it, just hugged her stuffed rabbit tighter and said, "They don't like when you listen." That freaked me out more than anything. Emily was only 9, and yeah, she loved making up stories, but the way she said it, flat, serious, like she was repeating something she'd actually heard, gave me chills. I started spending more time outside the house. Walking through town, hanging out at the diner with some kids from school. That's when I first heard about the Willow Creek house. Apparently, the house had a reputation. People whispered about it, but no one gave me a straight answer. One kid, Jason, told me, "Man, you live there. My cousin swears a family disappeared in that place back in the 90s. Another girl rolled her eyes and said, "Don't listen to him. It's just a crack house story. Some druggies squatted there for a while." But the way they both looked at each other made me think there was more. One evening, while biking home, I saw Mr. Crawford again. He was out on his porch, smoking. I tried to ignore him, but he called out. "You hear it yet? The scratching?" I froze. He said it so casually, like he already knew. When I didn't answer, he leaned forward and added, "You best tell your daddy to get you out before it's too late. That place don't keep families. It eats them." I biked home faster than I ever had in my life. That night, the scratching started again at 3:17. Only this time, it wasn't just scratching. It was a dragging sound, like something heavy moving inside the walls. And then, clear as day, a voice whispered. "Get out." I bolted downstairs, heart hammering. My parents were already awake, sitting at the kitchen table. My mom was crying. My dad looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. That's when he finally told me the truth. The house used to belong to a family named the Hanleys. Husband, wife, 2 kids. They lived there in the late 80s. One night, the mother and kids just vanished. No forced entry, no signs of struggle, nothing. The father claimed he woke up to find them gone. The police never found any evidence, and the case went cold. A few years later, another family moved in. Same story. The daughter went missing first, then the mother. The father was found dead in the basement, apparently by suicide. The house sat empty for a while after that. Then it got cheap enough for us to buy. When I asked why the hell they'd move us into a house with a history like that, my dad slammed his fist on the table. Because it was a good deal. And because I don't believe in ghost stories. But the way his voice cracked at the end told me even he wasn't sure. I wanted to scream at him. To pack my stuff and run. But before I could, Emily came padding into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. She looked right at us and said something that made my blood run cold. "They're mad you told." And then she fainted. Emily fainting that night should have been the moment my parents packed us up and left. But instead, they carried her back to bed, whispering to each other in urgent voices I couldn't make out. I couldn't sleep. Around 3:17, like clockwork, the scratching started again. I sat frozen in bed, clutching a flashlight, waiting. But this time, instead of coming from the walls, it came from underneath the floorboards. And then, the trapdoor. I'd never noticed it before, but near the corner of the attic, under some dusty boxes, was a small square cut into the floor with an old brass handle. The scratching came from there. I should have run. Should have screamed. But instead, I pulled the handle. The hatch creaked open, releasing a stench so strong it made my stomach twist, damp earth, mildew, and something else, like rust. I shined my flashlight down. There was a narrow tunnel, wooden beams supporting the dirt walls. It looked hand-dug, like someone had clawed their way under the house. The scratching stopped the second I pointed the light inside. That was when I heard Emily's voice, faint, echoing from the tunnel. "Come play." But she was asleep in her bed. I knew she was. I slammed the hatch shut and pushed the boxes back over it. I didn't sleep at all. The next day, I confronted my parents again, but they shut me down. My dad barked that I was feeding into Emily's imagination. My mom begged me not to make things worse. But I couldn't ignore it anymore. That night, I stayed awake, waiting. At 3:17, the hatch rattled. Not just scratching this time, knocking. Slow. Steady. From the inside. I pressed my ear against the floor, trembling. And I swear I heard multiple voices whispering at once. Not angry, not kind, just coaxing, like 100 people all saying the same thing over each other. "Join us." That was when Emily's bedroom door creaked open. She walked down the hall, eyes half closed, like she was sleepwalking. But her face wasn't blank. She was smiling. She went straight for the attic. Straight for the hatch. I grabbed her, yelling for my parents. They came running, but instead of helping me, my dad yanked Emily out of my arms and shouted at me like I was the problem. Like I was the danger. "She's not yours to protect," he screamed, voice breaking. "It wants her, not you." My mom sobbed, covering her mouth. And that's when I realized, they knew. They'd always known. This wasn't just a cheap house. This was a bargain. Something my parents had agreed to, whether out of desperation or denial. They weren't here to escape the curse. They were here to feed it. That night, chaos erupted. Emily slipped from my dad's arms and bolted up the attic stairs with unnatural speed. The hatch was wide open, the stench pouring out. My flashlight flickered and died. I chased after her, heart in my throat, but as I reached for her, I felt hands, dozens of cold, skeletal hands, clawing up from the hatch. They pulled at her ankles, her arms, dragging her down. She didn't scream. She just laughed. My parents stood frozen, tears streaming down their faces. My dad whispered, "It's the only way. It's always the youngest." I screamed, fought, clawed at the hands, but it was useless. Emily disappeared into the darkness below. The hatch slammed shut on its own. Silence. When I turned, my parents were gone. Not ran downstairs, gone. The hallway was empty. I tore through the house, room by room. No sign of them. The front door was locked from the inside. I was alone. And then, the scratching started again. From every wall. Every floorboard. Every ceiling. I ran. Out the door, into the street, barefoot and shaking. Straight to Mr. Crawford's porch. I banged on his door until he opened it. He looked at me with hollow eyes and said only one thing. "You stayed too long. I don't live in Willow Creek anymore. I don't talk to my parents, if they're even alive. Emily. I don't let myself think about where she is. The house still stands, though. I checked online once. Zillow listing, cheap as ever. New family moved in just last year. They've got 2 little kids. Part of me wants to warn them. To drive back and scream at them to get out. But I won't. Because sometimes, in the dead of night, when the world is quiet, I still hear scratching. And deep down, I know the house isn't done with me either.